My name is Rick Starkweather, also known as Fallen Lime. Uh, this is going to be a video discussing some very basics of Daz3D lighting. I'm making this because these are tricks I wish I'd known years ago that I've picked up over the years, and they are simple things that you can do to improve your lighting in a scene. Now to start with, what we have here is a basic model. It is a Genesis 8 character. It is wearing a simple outfit and hair. That's all that's in the scene. Now, if we go to NVIDIA iRay to basically do a pre-render, it'll give us this. It's very straightforward. There's not a lot of complex lighting in this. I'm going to use this to discuss the very fundamentals here. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of iRay mode, go back to texture shaded. We're going to go into render settings. We're going to go into environment, and there's going to be this thing called environment map right here. What we will do is take this is the default. We're going to go choose none. The distinction on this is now there is all of these additional settings, date, time, etc. The key things that you're going to want to look for here are going to be the date and time. You're also going to worry about dome rotation, going to worry about SS haze. That's going to be the last one we're going to tackle of this specific setting. Now, this is a scene with no background, there's no items in it. It's very straightforward, it's very plain. I'm going to go ahead and again go into NVIDIA iRay. Notice that the shadow is very different, it's also very stark. Now, by changing the date, I'm going to change this to October 10th. You notice that you'll notice the shadow will change slightly. I'm also going to change the time to say 10 a.m. Now, it's got 10 p.m. at the moment, so obviously you have darkness. Now you have 10 a.m. Shadow is very different. You can then also use your dome rotation to basically move where the sun is in respect to your characters or your current camera angle. Please do keep in mind I am in perspective view. This is not a camera shot. This is just perspective. This is a good idea to kind of get a baseline of where you're at. You also have, as I mentioned, SS haze. I usually don't want to go over about 1 on this, but what this does is provide a slight bit of sun haze, which can also cause the shadow in the background to become a little fuzzier, a little less distinct. It's usually very good. It also makes the tone a little more red. But it's a good lighting thing to know. This is, again, fundamentals. This is very base lighting. This is just using dome and scene. So I'm going to go pop out of this. Go back texture shaded. Now we're going to start discussing things that are a little more complex. We're going to go into HDRI. Now I have a lot of these. But for simplicity's sake, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of skim through, find something that works. Desert works fine. You're going to double click on it. You're not going to see anything immediately in the view here because, again, we're just texture shaded. Go back to NVIDIA iRay. Let it load through. And now there's this background here. The character lighting is based off of this, much like in the other format where there was no background. If we go into render settings, again, you have an environment in here now, and you can change your dome rotation. And that will actually change also the background and to where, so you see back here, it's now moving further to the left, and the shadow is now further to the left. Now this is your easiest form of lighting. It doesn't get any basic than this. And if you need a quick render with reasonable lighting, that's all you really need. Now we're going to get into a little more complex. I'm going to choose a scene. Just going to look for, let's go with condo. This works fine. I know that there's an iRay version, there's a 3DL version, that's 3 to light. I'm just going to load the iRay version. It's just going to make things simpler. Now we have this condo scene. Now you note that it comes with its own cameras that you can switch to and just pick one and what have you. This is obviously one for more outdoor. This is looking in. Okay. This one's an indoor. Let's go ahead and grab the character and move her in here further. And rotate her. Find a pose. That'll work. Okay. So this is using the camera 3 that was in this preset. I'm just going to go ahead and again do a pre-render. To see how this looks using their base camera settings. Now you'll note that this is lit back here, and there is this, the lighting that's on these. Now all these are selectable. You can go into your texture, select the appropriate one. I'm going to say 3 spotlights by the couch. Go into your surface. This is discussing the second thing I wanted to go over. The lighting in a given scene is not always going to be correct. This is just a baseline. This is how they send it through. It's fine. It is emissive color 1. This is typical emissive temperature 63 or 5300. So it's warm, but not too warm. Oddly enough, the lower the temperature, the warmer we perceive it, the closer to red. The higher the temperature, closer to blue. We actually consider that a cooler temperature. It's a weird thing in lighting. The luminescence in here is listed as 500,000. That's 500,000 candelas per meter squared. I always prefer doing this in kilo candescents per meter squared. It's going to get a ton brighter. Now, it's very bright in the background. You can see that. It's because we just raised it by a factor of 1,000. So we're going to drop it by a factor of 100. And it's back to about where it was. Or actually, in fact, yeah. So we're going to go to 50,000. Take a look there. This is a little better. This isn't perfect, especially since you can't really see her front because there's no lighting that is visible from up front. There is basically things blocking off the incoming light. If we were to really be worried about that, I functionally wouldn't be. Now, that is the way that you can easily start by going, okay, how do I adjust the scene to really try to get better lighting? Again, you would do the same for this bulb here. We're just going to add a 0. It's the same difference to what we did the other place. Now it's kind of more even lighting over there. There's still not really any lighting up here of note. There is this ceiling. There's a ceiling living, but there's not anything directly over her. And the lighting on her front is, again, still bad. So we're going to go back to texture shaded. We're going to go back to perspective view. You can now see where she's at. You see there's a little bit of transparency right here that she could have gotten some lighting from. It's just not going to be substantial enough at this juncture. So what we need to actually do is add some prim lighting. Now this is the third type of lighting that I'm going to discuss in this. There's one more I'm going to cover, but I really only use it on special occasions. I don't use spotlight, period. I will use pin lighting or point lighting every once in a great while for specific effects. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here. We're going to create a prim. If you want to create a cylinder, create a cylinder. If you want to create a torus, create a torus, create a torus. All of these do something slightly different as far as lighting is concerned. I rarely, if ever, use cube lighting. There are specific reasons to do so. I'm not going to go into them. Cylinder is good for just to mock up that, hey, there's a lamp in a corner. Cone, very unlikely to use. Sphere is good for dome lighting. Torus will give you the effect that a lot of streamers will use to give their own face lighting. So, like if you're doing a shot about somebody that's streaming or that's directly on camera, that is, the camera exists in the world as part of the scene, as opposed to the camera is just taking the image or the animation. Plane is just generally a good go-to. It's good to place, it's easier to reshape. So we're going to start by creating a 1 meter plane. It's good default. Most situations you're not going to need larger than a 1 meter. There are exceptions. There are always exceptions. But you go to the plane. What we're going to do is we're going to just real quick give it an emission color of white. We're going to give it an emission temperature about 5250 because it's similar to what the temperature was for the other. We're going to go ahead and set this up to 1500 kilocandels or kilo candescent units. I always get it confused. Regardless. So that's set. I'm just going to rename this real quick. Plane light. Because this may get duplicated and it's just easier to do that. I'm also going to take all of the scene before that point, real quick, drop it into a group. Apartment group. Oh, wrong button. And there. This way I can then take this plane light and just move it directly underneath the character. And then unparent it. But gives me a much better idea of where she's at. Now, this was the camera, or sorry, that was the camera I was using before. So we need to basically put this in a spot where it's going to light the character, but it's not going to be in that camera view. So immediately on top of the character is fine. If we move this too far back, we start clipping into where that wall is, and we don't really need that. We're also going to arc or adjust this a little bit so that it is angled. Now, ideally, I would want this like directly on there, but that's just not going to happen. Realistically speaking, I'm going to have to slide this slightly to the side and down, which is fine. Easy peasy. We'll also adjust it so that it is diagonal more toward the character. Now, this is what we would consider 1-point lighting. We have a single emissive prim that's right here. We're going to go back into camera 3. We still see this is now in shot, ergo we need to adjust that. Let's adjust it back, adjust it over, and it's just off camera. Now this is the same shot we had earlier. We're going to do a quick save because I haven't yet. Temp. This doesn't really matter. And we're going to wait for my computer to catch up by saving this because it always does this the first time. For what it's worth on these specs, I am running an NVIDIA iRay, or I'm running an NVIDIA 3060 card with 6 gigs of onboard RAM, if anybody's curious. Okay, so it looks like it's fine. Again, we're going to go ahead and do this quick render just to kind of get an idea of what it looks like with this additional lighting. Notice she's a lot easier to see. This gives you some decent lighting. You can now see the character. It looks a lot better. But if this were traditional, say, photography, if this were camera for, say, video, so film, uh, we would actually do 3-point lighting. Technically, this is actually already 3-point lighting because there's this emissive prim that's up here. There are these other lights here, and then there's actually the headlamp from the camera itself. I haven't covered that. Let's just touch on that real quick. If you go into headlamp, there's an offset. You can adjust this as needed. You can change the headlight intensity as needed. Sometimes, like having this at 0.2 is perfect. Sometimes having it off, which is like this, still okay. It's the camera in this wasn't really making a huge distinction, or a huge difference rather. So we're going to go back to texture shaded. You're going to need to see that it's like this. This tells me right now there's a headlamp blocker already in the scene. It's not something I was really looking for, but it does tell me that it exists. I'm going to actually kill all of the world lights because it gives me more control. Now it goes completely black. Now I'm going to do a render again. The completely black means that there is no point light or spotlight on the character when your headlamp is off. Still looks fine. I'm happier with this. It gives me more control. We're going to go back to texture shaded. We're going to go back to perspective view. No, we have all this light again. We're going to go ahead and choose this plane light. Now, something you may not know, you can duplicate these, and this will save you time. Duplicate nodes. Just creates a brand new one, labeled number 2. It's in the same exact location. What I'm going to do now is move this. I'm going to actually use these controls as opposed to the normal movement because that way it actually stays perpendicular. I'm now going to go ahead and adjust this so that it also changes the lighting. Go back to this camera. I just want to make sure that it's not in the frame, and it's not. So we'll do another look just to see how does this now look with this second piece. It is now very much brighter because you have these two different light sources. At which point you probably want to select them both, go both into your surfaces. They're the same surface. Lower the emission rating because you now have more light. So we'll half them because we just have light. Notice you have now a more even look on this character. The lighting is more even. You have better shadows. This is now 3-point lighting because you have these back sets that are lighting things up. You have this one and then you have this one. So that's actually 3-point lighting. You could, in addition, also put, say, an emissive prim right above her and slightly to the back. That's also pretty typical for 3-point lighting. This is the easiest way to light any indoor scene overall, is use emissive prims, set them up accordingly. If you are planning on moving the character around a lot and you kind of want the lighting to stay consistent, you can always group up these emissive prims and then parent them to the character itself. And so when you move the character, the lighting stays the same. So that is your standard 3-point lighting overall. That's using emissive prims. Now, I'm not going to actually show this next part, but I'm going to real quick describe why and when you might want to actually use a point light. I'm not going to cover distance light. I don't really like using it. I think you can get better off of this without it. But point lights, as opposed to like linear point light, are really good if you are trying to put things like candles in the distance. I know that sounds really peculiar, but we're coming up on Halloween and spooky stuff. And having like single points in a dark scene in the background to emulate a candle, this will give you that perfect effect. It's a great way of doing it. Now, the one thing I would like to cover before I get much further, and this is again something that people have asked about. It's like, well, what about my render times? How is this going to affect my render times? First thing first, having good lighting is always going to make your render time lower unless there is a lot of different light sources. There are a few scenes that I know that if I load it into a scene, that render is going to take me 3 to 4 hours per shot because there's a ton of lighting in it and a lot of detail. You also can get into situations where you have, say, this transparency. which I'm just going to bounce back. Should still have that desert in the background. It does. I'm going to go ahead and remove these two lights real quick. And you can see like there's the desert that's back here that's still in the scene. And that's actually a great way to get like just a general background. If you do not have something like that back there, and this is what I was wanting to get to. Earlier, I was using a null environment, a blank environment. So we're going to switch back to that. Let my computer catch up. There we go. Choose none. Note it just kind of goes gray back here. What you then can do is go into environment, choose types, choose backdrops. It's now white. Well, I'm going to select a general color. And you have now kind of a default blue sky background, but the problem is now there's also this part here. That darkened part is the ground showing. And let me just find that real quick. Ground texture, ground, draw ground. If you choose off, poof, goes away. This is also what causes you to have a shadow in the first place if you are just on an I-ray background. So that covers the basics of lighting that I at least wanted to discuss. A quick tutorial on how that works. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out here. I also am available on DeviantArt as The Fallen Lime, and I am on Reddit. I will be posting this link in Reddit, so if you're watching this from Reddit, hey, thanks for coming. And I also post videos now and again about game development, game design, general just art projects. For just a quick gloss over, I have a bachelor's degree in game design from Illinois State University and a master's degree in creative technologies. This is what I do for a living right now, is I make art. But I am trying to make more videos so that I can help people, because there are things that I wish I knew that I didn't, and this at least will hopefully help somebody. Again, thanks for being here, thanks for watching, and peace.